Bonjour and welcome to Corporate Underground. Today we have the fantastic frog, Philippe. Now, what can I tell you about Philippe? Philippe once created 30 different types of chocolate mousse. He's not a chef, he just decided to do that just for shits and giggles. Originally from France, now lives here in Australia. Welcome, Philippe, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. And yes, there was a lot of different recipes of chocolate mousse.
It's such a cliche that the French guy is just experimenting with the different recipes. You try something a bit different.
That was the whole point, to come to the market with something completely different. And it's been well received, actually. There was one chocolate mousse that had a fair bit of success. There was a mix of chocolate mousse and creme brulee on top.
My wife would be very happy with that. She would indeed. So why mousse?
Oh,
What was the?
That's very interesting. So when I arrived in Australia, I was looking for a job. I didn't think of starting my business or doing anything. I was quite happy to, get a job and start a family and support my family this way. And turns out that was a bit more difficult than I was expecting. And I remember what one of my friends told me when I had to close my business many years ago, after being in practice 8 years. His suggestions was to get back to success. And he said, when you have something hard happening to you, one way to get back to success is to cook pasta. Because, it's very hard to fail. You cook pasta, you feel good, you have a success in cooking pasta. And I'm like, well, I know how to cook pasta, but that's a bit boring. But I can do chocolate mousse. That sounds like a fun thing. And turns out I did quite a number of chocolate mousse, and I was inviting my friends, and the words got out. And some of my friends were requiring my chocolate mousse because they were, layers and flavors and spices and everything, up to a point where I had even one corporate event that asked me for chocolate mousse when I was in France. That was not a business or anything, but that was like a side thing happening. So long story short, and linking that to Australia, I thought, well, it seems that getting a job here is tougher than I was thinking. Maybe that's an opportunity. So I know how to cook chocolate mousse. I'm going to polish a couple of recipes, build systems, build a brand, and go out there. And that's what I did.
Fantastic.
Great hustle, yeah.
Look, he's French and he has chocolate mousse. If you weren't married, you just wouldn't have the throwing at you. I'm just saying.
And I don't like the comment that everyone can cook pasta. I think the first meal I tried to make for my wife when we were dating was pasta, and I put all of it in, and they said yeah. And when they didn't know I meant all the packets I had, so I put 2 packets of pasta in the pot, and it just turned into this giant pie of solid pasta.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Not everyone can cook. I went on a camping trip many years ago.
Well, I didn't say I can't cook.
No, you can't.
No, but that's fine. I'm just saying that as a general, statement. On that camping trip, there were about 11, 12 people, and there was that girl who decided to cook rice for everyone for dinner. Turns out she couldn't. And it's the first time I've met someone that couldn't cook rice. I thought that was pretty simple, but she blew it big time.
Well, until you've done it, you go like boiling an egg. If you leave it on there for 5 hours, it's not going to come out very good. So you know what to do.
Yeah.
So Philippe, this idea around the mousses also ties into your philosophy around life, which is really to kind of take something and take it to the nth degree and get really, really good at it. We've had a couple of chats over some of the dinners and lunches. So to explain that, you've been meditating for 25 years, but you have this philosophy around kind of just getting just excellent and better at what you do. So what motivates you to do that?
Wow, that's a deep question. How am I going to tackle this one?
Thank you.
I think I never liked the idea of competing with others. It doesn't make any sense. I don't compete with any other designers. They do their thing, I do mine. I like the idea of competing with myself, maybe, if that would be the case. And And that would mean for me getting better and improving on things that I think I can improve. And I think that started early in life. And when I was a teenager, I was 12 or 13, I was a skateboarder. And you know, when you skateboard, you wear all the gears and everything. So, and I had T-shirts that was saying "Skate and Destroy." I don't know if it's linked to a brand. I can't name that here, but and the whole idea of skate and destroy is not to destroy the furniture and the CD equipment and everything. You know, a lot of people get that wrong. The intention between skate and destroy is to destroy the skater you were yesterday and be a better skater, being able to do something that you couldn't do the day before or the week before. And it's destroying all the ideas, preconceived notions you have about yourself and all that stuff. So I think it's been ingrained in me for many years, and I always enjoy trying to, you know, push the limit and go beyond the words or the titles you have or stuff like that. So the idea of, for example, the chocolate mousse here in Australia is like, okay, there seems to be a challenge how I can flip that and turn that into an opportunity. And I think that's the same. Is, you know, it's like competing with myself or helping myself.
Mm. Was that part of something that, I mean, I always find with immigration or immigrants, Australia was built on that. Most countries, the best leave. The people that want to challenge things leave and come to a new country, because if they stay behind, they've got all the school friends, they've got all the abilities behind them. Going to a new country is a challenge in itself. Was that part of why you came to Australia? And how did you find coming to Australia when you landed? How tough was it? How did you get through that?
So the answer would be maybe on two steps. One is I had the good fortune to study in different places in the world. And so I studied in France. I also studied a bit in Germany and in UK. And then I did industrial design in Canada. And you know what they say about a mind that has expanded, it can't really come back to its original size. Which meant that I found that the French mindset of attitude got somehow limiting for me. That's one thing. The other thing is, even if I didn't realize that at the time, I was already an entrepreneur in France. I started my first business. I was 22, right out of the university and everything. It's like, okay, what can I do? Just knock on doors and design for other companies. And I realized that the red tape in France for entrepreneurs is like, it's insane. I mean, people complain here in Australia, but I think you have it pretty good. In France, I find it really difficult. And on top of that, I would say technical administrative challenge, you have a mindset challenge. I find that a lot of people despise entrepreneurs because if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to exploit people and make money, that type of thinking. And it's like, wow, it's like, no, I just want to do something that I can't do if I have a job, So, and after so many years of trying to fight the system and everything, I was really, if you experience starting a system a business in UK or in Canada, or, it takes you like 15 minutes. Like, it's very simple. It takes you weeks in France. So the whole idea was to say, okay, I'm kind of done with that system. I've experienced it. I play by the rules and everything. And now it's probably my time to try something different. And the truth was, is that I didn't intend to move to Australia at all, because I studied in Canada. I applied to be a Canadian permanent resident and eventually a citizen. And I was on my way to Canada, and I did all the application forms and everything. And that's where I met my wife, who is an Australian lady. And instead of going all the way up north, I went all the way, down under. So I think the distance is pretty much the same, but the environment is quite different. So that's the first part of the answer, that the first part of the context when it comes to why I decided to leave France and become an immigrant somewhere else. Now, when it comes to the specificity of Australia, I have to say I have been quite surprised by the welcome. I was told that was super easy to, fit in and get a job, or, that Australians were very welcoming and everything. And my experience was very different, actually, up to a point where I was denied a number of jobs because I was French. And even to this day, I still can't really comprehend what my nationality has anything to do.
Australians are assholes. We are. Present company very much included.
You're the only Australian, Tony.
Exactly.
So my understanding of that is quite different today. So at the time, I have to confess, I got upset. That the first time I was, there were only two candidates, and one was kind of unlikely, and one was more likely, and I thought that was me. And the other candidate got a job because I think he the son of the whatever was in the same school. So there was something that of familiarity. But what I understand today is not that Australians do that on purpose, or they're assholes, or they have prejudice, or they don't like French. I think it's nothing to do with it. I think they seek some kind of safety, and they tend to hire people that are in the same context that they already have experienced themselves.
Which is the worst type of diversity, isn't it? When you just get the same type of people around you.
It's probably not fantastic. And my take on that is Australia is missing out big time on innovation. Like what's left on the state. I mean, people complain that, immigrants don't get a job and everything. But the other side is that, well, it's not that easy to get in. But also, there are a lot of people that I've met that would be so happy to contribute and but they find the access really, really difficult. And hence there's money on the table that is left. And I think the amount, I don't know how we can calculate that, but it's probably in billions of dollars that are really, really left on the table.
What do you think, Ronan? I mean, you're an immigrant.
I'd agree with Philippe around the mindset of all of those things. I went for a job not long after I got here, and it was managing 2 staff, and I'd managed 25, 30 on a cruise ship. I was balancing $1 million budget at the end of the week, doing rosters, reports, all sort of thing, and they said, "Oh, you don't have Australian experience to manage 2 people." Yeah, okay, all right. Is it because it's too few? And anyway, so yeah, I experienced that as well, Philippe. Like you, was quite frustrated, and one of the things I did is, I'd started my own business and put my life savings into it. Partly because, like you, my head had been turned by traveling the world, so my mindset had changed from this is all I know and this is my little sort of patch. So yeah, I'd agree with you on a lot of those things, Philippe. I suppose easier for me that my accent wasn't quite as bad, although I'm a Pommy, and that still kind of comes with those connotations. But definitely I think that idea is in every country around. These days, people hire for a box, and they want to put that people in that box. You must have this skill set, and you must have worked in this industry, and you do all of these things. Yeah. And all it is really is for them ask covering if something goes wrong, and they can say, well, the manager can say, well, we hired someone because they had all that skill set, and the recruiter can say, well, you told us to hire all this person, and as a result, you get no diversity of thought, and you miss out on that huge amount of creativity. And someone will go, I gotta say, I've come from this different industry, and I've come from this different job, and there's much better ways you can do this. They don't think like that because they know the same system.
But change is scary for all humans. Like it's one of those things that we don't really like to change, but we get excitement from it, and some of us actually start to get drawn to that. I mean, Tony, you're on the creative side of things. I mean, how are you seeing that sort of change happening? I mean, because imagination, we always look away from Australia and go, look at there's a creative people. We've got a lot of creativity here, but we don't seem to get behind it the way that we do. A lot of ideas have come from Australia, but we don't really take it through to the next level.
I think every single human on this planet is born creative. Okay, so there's not one particular culture or land or city or whatever you could say is more creative. I think it's more that the places that we hear about that have a high chance of it would be because of the environment that allows it to flourish, where we're in everyone talks about the tall poppy syndrome in Australia, that anyone that gets too tall gets chopped down. No one likes to stand out. Like not only do you get chopped down, but no one even likes that idea of standing out. They're all a little bit too modest, or whatever the word would be for that situation. But I think that safety thing sort of gets my head in, and also like just there's so many reasons for it, but like people's inability to take risks, even having the headspace for micro risks. So it's like in my industry, it's like everyone's recruiting, and you get a young person or someone that wants to change industry, and you ask them what the biggest issue, and they go, well, everyone that I go interview or every job I look at, they want 2-3 years experience, but how do you start if you don't have, and if everyone wants it, how do you even start? So and companies don't have the systems or structure or environment or culture to allow new people in, to even have the headspace to teach people. Like every plumber you've ever met started off as an apprentice, and there's a system around that, but we don't have that at all outside of trade. It does not exist. That there, like the closest thing would be an intern, but that's like a few weeks somewhere.
It's free labor. It's free labor for a few weeks.
It's free labor, which is like, if they're not actually a student, is illegal. Like you can't actually have someone work for free unless they're actually a student.
Yeah. I look, the thing is, it is funny though that Philippe went to creativity and he made different types of mousses. I really do believe that with in Australia, the creativity is in our food. If you look at the Asian fusion and the European fusion, if I go to Europe, I don't get a Thai like I would, or in America, you don't get that sort of flavor combinations. And Indian and all these sorts of food groups that have come into Australia, I see them in certain areas and pockets around the world, but not in a way that Australia's done that. And I think once you use the creativity around food, you open to a lot of people. You're able to create that sort of connection. I don't find many racist people that go, I really hate Chinese people if they really like Chinese food. It seems to be the two things that are able to be done. One, if you travel a lot and you really like other people's food, it's hard to not connect with somebody. So, Philippe, I mean, like you came here, you started out. What are the things that you love about Australia? What are the things that have really sort of knocked you on your ass and sort of said, mate, this is something I can add to Australia? What can you do for that?
As I said, one thing that you can do here is to start a business, fail, and start again. It's something that is much harder, definitely in France, but even in other parts of Europe. If you fail once, it's like, you're kind of a bit of a loser. Here, you can start something, fail, and start again, and there are limits to that. But still, it's not as positive than it is in the US. In the US, you go to a meeting and you say, I failed 3 business, and they say, oh, fantastic! What did you learn? They get super excited. Here, not quite so, or not quite as much, but still, you still have a chance to bounce back and do something different. So that's something I really like. The other thing is I like to flip the coin, which means Australia, I think, lacks a bit in risk and creativity. So I'm here to take risk and take the creativity to the next level. That's the whole purpose of my venture here. Is actually, if you look at what I do in my design studio, it's more, I behave more like a VC than a designer. And we can talk about that later. But so the flip side of that is there's not enough of that. Well, I'm going to create that pocket and see if I can turn that into something in order to demonstrate that it's possible. That is as simple as that.
Okay, awesome. That we're just about out of time, but that wraps up quite nicely and is a nice segue into next week's show. So next week, Philippe, we're having you back, and we're going to start to talk about 2 of the biggest mistakes that small business and entrepreneurs make. And that ties in quite nicely to that last answer. So, Philippe, thank you. Merci buckets, as they say in French.
Merci beaucoup. Yes.
Silver plate. Yes. Yeah. You just murdered the English language, the French language. It's got its English too.
Yeah.
doing so well. So, Philippe, thank you so much for coming on the show. Corporate Underground. We'll see you next week.
See
Thanks,
ya.
mate.
Au revoir.
Thanks, guys.
Au revoir. Mercy bucket, silver plate.
Mercy bucket. Yeah, I'm pretty sure bucket is not.